Welcome to the We Talk Careers podcast, brought to you by Women in ETFs. This is Kristine Delano, and I'm thrilled you've joined us. If you're pursuing excellence in your own career or intrigued by the hustle required to make it to the top, this podcast is for you. This is season 6, and we are dropping in on leaders across the globe. We're going to learn how to balance, how to speak truth to power, and how to have fun doing it. So put aside that massive to-do list and let's get inspired. Today I'm joined by Roxane Sanguinetti. Roxanne is an experienced investor in public and private markets and led and is a founding partner of Alma Angels, advocating for a more inclusive investment community. Roxanne is the global co-head of membership for women in ETFs. And I recently found out she is also a boxer, which I am really excited to learn more about. But welcome, Roxanne, to the We Talk Careers podcast.
Hi, Kristine. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I know maybe you're more of an amateur at this, but you've got to tell us about getting into boxing. What is that about?
So I kind of got roped into it by a friend of mine. And she said, come do this training, it'll be fun, and it's for charity. And so I said, okay, cool. So we were raising money for research against breast cancer. And we had this very intense 3-month training last year to then get in the ring. And I will say it's a very humbling experience the very first time that you get punched in the face. Nothing like it. And on the day, it was completely surreal. Like some of my clients within the ETF industry came to support me. One of the CEO of an asset manager had booked tickets for his entire team, so it was even more intimidating to be like this. But my family and my friends had like this VIP table around the ring, and then we had this fight, and I kind of made a little mistake, let's say. So in boxing, you have this ring at the end of the round, and I didn't really hear it, and so I hit my opponent after the ring, and which obviously is a big mistake, and you lose a lot of points. And I just instantly went like, oh my god, I didn't mean that. But it made my family laugh a lot, and so yeah, it was for charity, so it was in good spirit, but it is really intense to prepare for something like this, and I don't think there is really anything like this. I would really encourage some people to try it and see how they feel. Like the stress but the excitement that you feel before getting on the ring is incredible.
Wow. So the friend that recruited you into doing this, did she do it as well?
Yes, and I'm very happy that they didn't put us one against the others. I'm not sure, given how competitive we were, I'm not sure if we would still be friends, But yeah, she did it too, and she's been trying to convince me to do it again since then. But I honestly do not want to show up at meetings with a black eye, so I'm kind of...
Oh my goodness. Oh, wow. That's incredible. You had to be a good friend to convince me to do boxing, but I think the idea of just the adrenaline, the idea of feeling that is not something that you feel every day, right? We can be competitive in lots of different ways, but this is like taking it to another level.
Yeah, definitely. In that moment when you come out and you've chosen a song to come out and to get to the ring, and then all eyes are on you, and really intense. Wow. It was a beautiful experience.
And were there other fights that's in that same event? Like how many people were fighting in that? Was it an evening or an afternoon in London? Or
it was a whole evening event, and very similar to how it is organized for professional boxers as well. So I think on the evening there were maybe 10 to 15 fights, and I was one of the last ones actually. I was probably second to last, and so had to spend the whole evening waiting and rising. We also had, on top of the charity, we had to sell tickets to the event and getting people to come. It was really well organized, I must say.
And did you get to know the person that you punched after the
No,
bell?
not really. Well, I think we weren't training together. We weren't in the same group, and we clearly did not stay in touch.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, Roxanne, thank you for doing that. Thank you for putting your body at risk for raising money for breast cancer. That's really incredible. So I am really intrigued by what you do and how you got there. And so I know our listeners will be as well. So take us back to 2019 and where you were in your career and how you've journeyed from there to where you are now.
The end of 2019 was a very interesting time for me because two big things happened. One, I took risk by joining a new team at a company that at the time was called Goldenberg Haymeyer, which we then rebranded to GHCO. But essentially, I was part of a team that did a management buyout of this market making firm in the ETF industry. And we had decided to completely rebuild it from the ground up. And so on one side, I had this happening in my career. And then on the other side, I had just been on the side of my day job, I had been advising some founders and more pro bono on how to talk to investors. I had realized that a lot of them were amazing at their business, but they didn't know how to build a financial model. They were really intimidated by conversations with investors. They had never had to face that. So I started helping a few of them. And then every time someone would ask me, do you know any women angel investors? So do you know any investors in startups? It was always the same 5 names that would come up between me and some friends. And we thought, okay, we got together with a few people and we thought it's impossible that there are only 5 women angel investing in the UK. And so we gathered a group of us, both women and men, by the way, of 20, 30 of us, and we brought this researcher, Dr. Cater, who has done research on the biases in the fundraising process. And at the time, a lot of data was coming out about how little funding we're going to women. So depending on where you are in the world and depending on the time, it's between 1% to 2% of venture. Women are consistently underrepresented, underserved, and underestimated in the startup ecosystem. Whereas in reality, if you look at the data, they outperform. So they receive a lot less funding than male founders, so they have to come up with really incredible creative solutions to make their businesses viable, and they become profitable much faster. So they're kind of a gold mine. And so this little group that we had, we created a WhatsApp before communities were saying on WhatsApp, and we started exchanging resources and knowledge and deal flow, and then COVID happened. And when we weren't working on our day jobs, we were on call with founders, we were on call with one another. And that year, we went a little bit nuts, and we ended up by the end of the year doing more than 50 investments altogether. And that was the start of Alma Angels. It just kind of kept growing, and we can talk about where it is today. But essentially, our belief is that the key to a systemic change is to grow the pool of diverse check writers, because we think that with more diverse investors in the ecosystem, we'll see more diverse founders thrive. And actually, if you take it back to the ETF ecosystem, it's the same that we've heard with fund managers, right? Like, we want to see more women in charge of money, whether it is at a very early stage in the venture private equity.
I have so many questions for you, but I really want to back it up because I'm not sure that everyone sort of has the same level definition of what an angel investor is. So maybe take us through sort of venture capital, angel investing, and at a real sort of basic level so that we can kind of really understand what it is that you do.
Sure. So very simply, an angel investor is someone who's going to believe in a company's very early stage. So it's at the startup stage. Sometimes it's even just an idea, you know. So it can be a friend coming to you and saying, I'm starting this and I need some money. And then you put in, you know, a small check into that nascent business. And then all of a sudden you're an angel investor without knowing it, actually. But what's crucial is that an investor at that stage, you're not just giving your money or your capital, but you're actually supporting the company, and you're being that first believer. You're saying, like, yes, I think what you're building is worth it, and I think it can go far. And so that's what it is to be an angel investor, essentially. So you're usually quite early on in the journey, in the story of the company.
And so when you're doing it, where is the capital coming from?
Well, it's essentially it's your passion capital. It's the capital once you've been saving and you've invested a portion of your wealth into, liquid assets and whatever public real estate, whatever it is that you want, then you carve out a portion of your wealth or your income for these investments. So it is definitely, when you look at the spectrum of investing, it's on the riskier end because startups fail. A lot of startups fail. But it is also on the spectrum, it is where you're going to learn a lot. So like a lot of angel investors do it not just for the potential for return, but they actually do it because they want to be close to innovation. They want to be close to these new companies and what they're developing and new technologies and new ways of doing things. And so it's almost like a lot of people think about it as capital that they've put aside for kind of their learning and development, which has the potential to return big because a lot of startups fail, but then the ones who make it, the potential for return is outside.
So when you're talking to investors who want to get into the business of investing in these startups, these sort of amazing opportunities to get on the ground floor of sort of innovation, especially in the space of having women and other folks that maybe wouldn't have the access to capital that you've talked about, how is it that they stay involved in, learning about the companies that they've invested in? How is it that they, continue to learn through this process as being an investor?
Mm-hmm. So there's a few stages in your journey as an angel. So there's obviously the investing stage. So that's probably where you're getting to know the company, getting to know what they're building, and you do your due diligence. So you actually look into that market or that, whatever it is that the problem that they're trying to solve, that company. And then post your investment, you have touch points with the company. So usually we recommend to the companies to do monthly or quarterly updates for their investors, where they show, the wins, the challenges, any asks for the investors as well. So that's a way to keep the investors engaged. And then usually when I'm here to support you, so use me where you need. And so different people have different skill sets. Some people might have a marketing background that could be very useful. Some people have certain connections with either other investors or customers, and that's how you can get involved with the founders. And some people can get very involved, like very hands-on. If that's what they do for a living, then it makes sense, And then some people who have a day job and are doing this kind of as a passion project on the side, they can dip in and out whenever they have capacity, essentially.
In Maine, and with a bank called Maine Community Bank, there is a program called Launchpad, which is sort of the idea of companies competing for an amount of capital to be invested in their companies. And so I have been a portfolio judge for many years, and then the last few years I've been sort of a main stage judge, because at the end they do it sort of like a Shark Tank where they come in and do their pitches, and then we ask them questions, and then we award money. And it's been so incredible for me to get to know sort of the venture capital community in Maine and all the entrepreneurs, and how many people are just excited about the diversity aspects, the innovation space, which seems like, well, Maine isn't Silicon Valley, but really when you take advantage of what are your natural resources, who are your people, there's just a lot of really cool innovation going on. So for me, it's been this huge eye-opening. Also has been very educational for me is how many people have such great ideas, but don't always know how to put together sort of a financial plan or any sort of, estimation of where they're going with their company. So in really basic terms, so maybe take us through a little bit of how you help sort of your entrepreneurs get to a point where investors would be interested in them.
So the way that we are doing it with Alma is a little bit different. We have certain partners where their role, a bit like that Launchpad, where their role is kind of more accelerating this company or incubating these companies. So we have people within the community that have that expertise and that skill set. on my side, what I focus on is actually the investors themselves. So what I try to do is that I want to give the tools and the knowledges and the resources to the investors so that they have what they need to then go and help the company. And the idea with that is that instead of me trying to help, there's only so many companies that I have time to meet and that I can help, right? But now, if I'm helping 10 investors, who each of them are helping 10 companies, then I have a much bigger impact on the ecosystem. So that's the approach that we're taking with Alma, is where we are training the angel side so that they can then go on to make smart decisions to invest and support the companies. And a lot of investors won't necessarily invest straight away, but they will spend time with the company getting them ready before, so that they then are at a point where they are comfortable themselves to invest, and then other people can jump on as well. And to give you some numbers for context, is that in the last 5 years, we've trained more than 550 women and men to become angel investors. And a kind of byproduct of what we've seen is that some people have gotten so excited about it, and they started building a track record that they are now raising their own funds. So we also have about 15 to 20 emerging fund managers within the Alma community, where we know that a big portion of their capital are going to go to support women.
Wow, that's so impressive, Roxanne. So what is the financial model for Alma Angels? So how is it that you grow and raise funds and, continue to thrive?
So I will actually explain to you how a traditional syndicate of investors work, and then I'll compare it with Alma. But so in a traditional syndicate, you usually have a syndicate lead or a small team for the syndicate that goes and reviews all of the deals, sources them, and then prepares the due diligence, and then says, oh, I think this is a good deal, and I would go back to you and say, Kristine, this is a good deal, you should invest for these reasons. What we're doing with Alma is a bit different. We are actually making all of the deals are available to the community, and if you're part of the community, you can refer a deal, and then the angels tell me, I want to do due diligence on this, or I'm interested in this, and then in the background, I help them with all the logistics. So I help them with organizing a call with the founders. I help them with galvanizing a bigger group of angels interested in that company. And then they share their feedback, and we help them with organizing the due diligence. And again, the reason why this is this is a different model that we've approached is because in a traditional syndicate, you're limited by how many deals your team can look at, whereas now we actually have all these eyeballs on the deals and all these different interests, right? Because what you like might be different from what I like. And so based on that, we've taken a different approach to monetizing it. We don't charge on capital deployed, which is normally what a syndicate would do. They would say, I've done all this work, so now when you're investing, you're paying me 5% fees, for example. Sometimes they ask the founders to pay that as well. So there's different models. In our case, we've actually decided this year to turn Alma into a nonprofit. And we have certain corporate partners that have come alongside for the ride. So HSBC Innovation, Morgan Stanley, Google, the law firm called Mishcon, all of them have come on board because they want to support what we're doing and help both the angels and the founders. So that's one bit. And then a big portion of what we do on the training is actually we go into bigger corporates and we teach people about the venture world. So we explain what it is to be an angel investor, and we give people the tools to become investors. And for example, we have a pilot going on with Barclays Bank at the moment, the private bank side, where they want to do it for their senior execs, and then they want to roll it out to our idea with these trainings is that if we can put a cohort together of 20, 30 people at a time who are from a similar background, then it means that it's easier together, and so they're more to feel more confident when they are going in and investing together, and also it means that they're more likely to continue doing it after the training, because in a lot of cases trainings can be very theoretical. And so they don't necessarily end up with people properly investing. So what we do is that we take them through that process, and then we embed them within the AMA community, and we help them and we hold their hand through the process until they make their first investments, and then they can continue their journey with us.
Tell me a little bit about London and how unique it is to run Alma Angels from there. What is it about it?
Sure. So I think if we compare it to, the US, in the US, you have your East Coast and you have your West Coast, and the West Coast is very much your tech side, your venture capital side, and then your East Coast is very much the financial services, the big banks. So you've got kind of this like separation between the two that's there and cultural. And then when you're looking at London, London is actually a place where all of these people meet together. So we've got the big financial services system, and we've got the big techs, and we've got loads of talent, and we've got some incredible universities. And so you actually have everyone in such close for the growth and the expansion of the early stage and the innovation ecosystem in general. But what we're seeing is, so AMA started out of London, but because COVID happened, we all went remote very quickly. And so we actually ended up with people a bit everywhere. And what we've noticed recently, we looked at the stats, and it's a bit crazy, but 70% of the community is either dual nationalities or dual locations. And so we know that there is also very much an interest outside of the UK. So we have some international chapters that we've opened now in different places in Europe. And in Europe, we are definitely seeing a lot of change. So like innovation ecosystem, quite a lot, Germany. And we're still seeing that Europe is still lagging behind the US, definitely in terms of size and numbers for the venture ecosystem. But we are seeing a lot of growth and a lot of good things happen. So we're very optimistic on that front.
Wonderful. We're about to get to our final question. I could talk to you forever. I know we have so many other things that we were planning to talk about as well, but Roxane, you really are just fascinating. Thank you for bringing this space to our listeners in such a accessible way. My last question is, for those who are listening to this saying, wow, I would love to spend some of my discretionary savings on this. And I know it's a little bit, it can be riskier, but there's also just this opportunity to get involved and to support some entrepreneurs. What would be the first few things that you would recommend that they do to get themselves prepared for entering into this space?
I would recommend to kind of look for your tribe, like look for a community. So whether it's a syndicate or an angel group in general, angel investing is very much one where there is only so much theory that you can learn. Then you have to go and learn by doing. So being exposed to more experienced investors who've done it before and hearing the way that they ask questions and the way that they do due diligence is the best way to get involved and to get more comfortable and confident. And so definitely helps to be part of a group rather than just trying to go at it on your own. So that would be kind of my first advice. And it's not just because of Alma I'm saying that. This is because we're seeing we're seeing proven results with it. So unless you've decided to quit your day job and do this full time, it's easier to have other people that you can exchange with and connect with and rely on others for part of your due diligence rather than trying to do everything on your own.
Oh, yes. The learn by apprentice model sounds like very important in this space. Just really understanding. I know what it's like to go through some of the companies that we award funding to, and being able to listen to other people's questions, other people's experience, even how ideas are incubated. It's really just it's a fascinating thing. So that's really great advice. So for our last question, which again, I wish we had more time, tell me a book that you might recommend to our listeners.
So can I recommend one that I actually haven't read yet because it's on pre-order? It's actually one from one of our women entrepreneurs. She is the founder of a company called Fairly, which she has made it her mission to help women and just people in general with sexuality. And she's just written a book with a researcher as well that's called Turn Yourself On. And the founder's name is Billy. Let me just double check the writing before I say that wrong. Billy Quinlan. So Quinlan, she is an absolutely incredible entrepreneur. And then I think her mission of improving your life through your sexuality and understanding yourself, and it all relates to how you also present yourself and your confidence, I think it is very inspiring.
Wow.
So I can't wait to read it.
I will definitely add that to the bookshelf. That is a unique one for us. I don't think we've had a book that talks about sort of the integral nature of our sexuality and how it can express in the way in which we feel and interact. So Turn Yourself On. Yes, that sounds fantastic. And I really love the idea of doing a recommendation based on a pre-order, because it's the idea of like, what gets people to not just buy a book, but buy a book early in anticipation of it coming. So thank you for making that recommendation. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Roxanne, for coming.
I was thinking I brought a little bit of out of the box thinking to the podcast, maybe between the...
Fantastic. Yes. And I hope more people think that way too. I love the way you think, and I love what you've been able to bring to our audience. And thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. This is great. Thank you.
And thank you, our listeners, for spending your time with us. I hope this is not just information, but you let it be transformational in how you think about your career. I'm rooting for you. If you're an Apple user, I'd really appreciate it if you took a few seconds to leave a rating and a review. Your ratings and reviews tell Apple that this is a podcast worth listening to. And in turn, your reviews will help We Talk Careers get in front of more listeners looking to succeed, just like you. And while you're there, go ahead and hit that follow button, because there's going to be another brand new episode and you don't want to miss it. Until then, keep thriving. Thank you for listening.